Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Mindset Project podcast, the podcast that gives you the tools to develop an elite physical and mental performance and gives you that daily dose of positivity. Using my own knowledge as a competitive swimmer and from different professionals, I hope to provide an experience which makes you think differently about the things around you and promote some sort of personal growth. I hope to connect you through evidence-based information from experts in their field. So with that, I would like to say, I hope you're doing well, staying fit and staying safe. So let's get on to it. On this week's episode, we will be discussing logbooking. This is also known as journaling or perhaps just keeping a diary. And I think this is a great tool to use because ultimately it keeps us accountable, and as I'll explain in this episode, it helps us keep track of our progress and work out what does and doesn't work for us. So I have used a logbook for, as long as I've trained as a swimmer, so from 2013. And I think the reason I kind of started doing it was just to track the meters I would swim in a training session, and tracking my food as my diet was absolutely shocking when I started swimming, or at least before I started swimming. So kind of like a little bit of context. So I started swimming competitively around 2013. So that would have meant I was in my first year of high school. And for anyone listening who isn't from Scotland, Our education system is that we have 7 years of primary school, so it goes from primary 1 up to primary 7, and then we have high school, and we have 6 years of that, so it's S1 to S6. And obviously, like when I started high school, I hadn't started swimming, so I wasn't too conscious about what I was eating, and my lunch would have been a pie from the shop outside my school, a packet of crisps, and a bottle of highly sugary, like isotonic drink, and it wasn't exactly balanced, was it? So thinking back now, it actually does make me kind of feel sick that I actually ate that for lunch. And actually thinking back, I actually think this is probably some sort of eating disorder. Now, I'm not 100% sure if it was an eating disorder, but like actually thinking back, it kind of looked like it was. For like example, when I came in from school, sometimes I could easily eat a like large packet of digestive biscuits. So I'm pretty sure that's like a 500 gram packet. And I would come in from school and just like scran them, and they'd be gone. And at the weekends as well, like my dad used to go to get like the morning rolls in and stuff, and he would go to Lidl's and get like croissants and like rolls and stuff, and I could easily eat about 4 or 5 croissants in one sitting. There was actually one time where I ate 4 dry rolls on their own, nothing in them, and I was actually ruthless when it came to like food. Honestly, it felt like anything that I could eat would just get scranned. And like why I did this, I do not know. And looking back, I can't tell if it's funny or if it's actually disgusting. But yeah, I remember one time as well. I was at Christmas and my friend got me one of, do you know those Lindt chocolates? Well, I got this like huge one which had about 40 or 50 Lindt chocolates inside, and I ate them all in one sitting. Yeah, my eating patterns were awful, and I think obviously like at the same time, I was at high school, and I think everyone at some point in high school felt like some sort of insecurity. And being a guy, I was kind of like remembering like I really want to like get a six pack, you know, get the girls, look good, whatever. And I think probably like the most searched thing I looked up was probably how to get a six pack, or in YouTube how to get a six pack abs. And actually it's pretty cringe if I'm being honest, but I'm pretty sure like guys who are listening probably have been through this as well, or girls, you know, I don't know, you might have done that as well. And I went from like eating all this crappy foods to waking up one morning and was just like, no, I'm going to like completely change what I'm putting into my body. And when I did this, I just thought, like, I'm going to completely, like, cut out these, like, sugary drinks, because obviously that sugar is, like, really bad for you. So that was kind of, like, the first thing I did. So I just woke up one morning and drank water. And, like, before this, I never drank water before this at all. Like, I would never consider drinking water as a drink. So going from, like, these high sugary drinks to drinking water, which I wouldn't normally do, it was quite a big change, and there wasn't any sort of transition. And I don't know how I managed to do it, because most people, when people do that, they always relapse because it's such a huge change, and most people actually need some sort of transition to that healthier habit. But I went straight into it and cut all of that bad stuff out, and I actually have no clue how I managed to do that. I think maybe because my mindset and my motivation to change was there, that it kind of was easier for me to do that. And if that was the case, then it kind of shows me that I've always had some sort of good mindset. Back then I just kind of had to tap into it, if that makes sense. And when I actually look back at it, I actually went from one extreme to the other. So I went from, eating really, really unhealthily to eating extremely healthy. And obviously at this time I was only 13 or 14 or something, so I had no knowledge whatsoever, and probably should have just kind of eliminated fatty foods or kind of cut back, instead of going so drastically and completely changing everything. For my breakfast, I went straight to having one boiled egg. That was all I had, and that's actually pretty. You might think obviously eggs are healthy, they're high in protein, whatever, but an egg is only about 80 calories, and there's no carbs in it, so that's kind of quite unhealthy for a breakfast. It'd probably been more healthy to have a couple of slices of toast or something like that. And I even went through the phase of eating green smoothies to try and lose weight, because at this point I actually had a pot belly. You couldn't actually see my toes because of my belly. Oh god, if you don't laugh you'll cry. So yeah, definitely went from being mega unhealthy to being mega healthy, but it probably wasn't as healthy as I thought it would be, because I completely cut everything down, which was probably quite a shock on my body. And this is probably why I started swimming in the first place, because I think my dad kind of organised me to go to the local swim club to try and get a little bit fitter and probably lose a bit of weight and be able to see my toes. And when I started swimming, this obsessive sort of mindset was still there, and I had to write down everything I did, everything I ate. I remember I went through a phase of doing sit-ups every day for a month, and sometimes I would do 25 sit-ups every 15 minutes from 9 AM to 5 PM. It was so bad. So in a way, this sort of obsessive behaviour started me on my logbooking journey, kind of. So it can't have been all that bad, and this is going back to a few what I've said in a few episodes, is that even if you have a really shitty situation, or you have something that's negatively impacted you, you can still take a positive from it. So when I started doing logbooks, I did kind of write down what I ate and what my sessions included. Now, it was probably more focused on the meters rather than actually the sort of strokes and techniques and stuff that I actually did. And I did kind of find it therapeutic to keep note of things and add things up. So but it wasn't until I went to a new club in 2015 where this club actually took a focus on logbooking. Before, I just did it independently, and just to try and keep me more accountable, and perhaps because of that obsessive behaviour that I did have, I kind of wanted to keep a tab on it. And this club had a big focus on logbooks, to the point where we actually had to hand ours in every Friday for our coach to read, and so she could kind of see where we were getting on, if we were eating right, sleeping properly, etc. And I think this was a very good way of coaching, because it can be very daunting as an athlete, and in particular young athletes as well, to speak to someone like a coach. But by writing down in a logbook and letting the coach read it, then it kind of means that anything that may be of concern, the coach finds, and obviously they can speak to the parents or speak to the welfare officer, and it can be addressed with the parents. So I think this was a very good way of coaching. So Morag, if you are listening, that was a winner. And when I started getting anxiety and went to see a psychologist in 2017, then my logbooking kind of evolved and adapted, and I added a gratitude journal within my logbook. So basically, I've been doing a logbook for a very long time, since about 2013, and I have kept every single one of them. And the reason I do keep my logbooks is just because it's obviously good to see your progress from where you start to where you are now, and what sessions you do and what sessions make you feel good, etc. But for me as a swimmer as well, it gives me like a whole range of different sessions, which is probably why I am so self-sufficient when it comes to training. Like, I know people who need a coach there to help aid them, but if a coach is like unwell or can't make the session for whatever reason, then I'm happy to get on and do it myself. Also, if I do like an extra session, it almost always involves a busy public session, and as a competitive swimmer, if anyone is listening, you know what I'm talking about. The public interpretation of fast lane is probably my interpretation of slow lane. So that is kind of a quick backstory on how I've kind of like used logbooking until now. So what is it I actually put in it? Well, the most obvious thing to write is the date. This is mainly so you can look back at different days. Like, you might have had a good day one week but can't remember when it was, so you can kind of flick through the logbook and find it, because you should have noted it somewhere which implied you were feeling great that day. So obviously, like, if you don't have the date on it, then you're just going to have like all these like all this information, and it might become very confusing if you don't have like broken down into like certain days. So the next thing I put in is when I wake up, and the reason I do this is because it helps me keep note of my sleeping pattern, and I can use it to see how long I've actually slept. Then I will put my breakfast, so everything I eat, I weigh everything as well, put the measurements as well, which makes it easier if you are tracking your macros, your calories, whatever. Also, I put down every vitamin or supplement I take, the drinks I take, like try and guess like how the volumes of the drinks as well, everything, put it down. And that sounds extremely anal, especially as I have the same thing every single day, so it's not like I'm going to be surprised when I wake up to have something different. But again, it just shows you have like some structure. So after breakfast, I normally do some sort of yoga or stretching, so I put that in as well. And between breakfast and lunch, I don't normally have a lot on. Like, if I do have a class, then I'll put that on with the time it was on. So if it was 9 till 10, I'll put like, I don't know, sports class brackets 9 till 10. Or I'll use it for meetings as well. I'll also put down any snacks I have, again, to keep me accountable and track my foods. Also, on Mondays and Fridays, I normally have training around 10 to 12, so that would go in as well. And when it comes to logging my training, I try to go into as much detail as possible. Is it, like, I kind of ask myself, is it an easy session? Is it a power session? A speed session? Every 100 meters is logged, and at the end of the session, I will put how I feel the session went. So, did I feel good? Did I do something that surprised me? Were my turns good? And I also rank how much effort I gave for that session. And again, this is just to keep a record of what sessions I feel worked for me and which ones didn't. So like, I could have an absolute beast of a session and I might have not felt great, so in the future I will know that those types of sessions won't really work. And I think this is a very important factor in training because it helps us understand how it makes us feel, and that way we enjoy our training and it doesn't become something that we're just doing for like we're going through the motions. And if you're listening but aren't an athlete, then you could always put in things you did at work, like meetings, whatever. Don't think because like I'm an athlete and I use logbooking for training and stuff that you can't use one too. Like, just put things that you do in the work, like I said, meetings, if you have calls, conference calls, or any significant thing that kind of made you feel good or something that you will remember. So my afternoon is very similar to the morning. I don't normally have a lot on unless I've got a class, or well, most of the time in a normal situation I would have training in the afternoon. So again, that would be put down there. I would also note down what I have for dinner, again keeping me accountable and giving me some structure. So again, if you can, write down the measurements of the foods if you can. Like, if it's a meal you've made, then don't obviously put like 50 grams of onions, 10 grams of tomatoes, that thing. You don't need to go into that much detail, but just make sure that you note it down to kind of help you keep track of what you're eating. And in the evening, I normally use this time for any sort of tasks I want to do. For example, do I want to solve Rubik's Cube, do some meditation, handstands, etc. I don't really do anything too strenuous after 6 p.m. because to me that is when I'm starting to wind down and get ready to go to bed. And I've never really been one of these people who stay up through the night studying or cramming. I've never been one of those. As soon as it goes to 6 p.m, that's it. Everything goes away, and I'm getting ready to go to bed. I will then write down the time I go to bed as well, or at least roughly when I'm going to go to bed. Then I will finish off with a gratitude journal. So if you tuned in for the last episode, I write down 3 things that make me feel grateful that day, and by writing them down, it kind of gives power and feeling to those words. And like I say, I prefer to do it at night because obviously you've got a full day of activities, events that you can kind of pick things out to make you feel grateful. And I always feel like being, obviously the last episode I talked about being more grateful, you become more content. So I feel like going to bed grateful, then you're kind of going to bed content, which means that you're going to be able to sleep better. Well, at least that's kind of what I've found. And I also have a goal sheet that I use every day, but you don't need to use one if you don't want to, but they can be very, very useful. And I have 10 goals that I have on the sheet, and they're basically the topic of the last 10 episodes, which is why I did them before this episode to kind of foreshadow, I guess you could say, us trying to get to this. So I have sleep, hydration, diet and supplements kind of come under, well, they're 2 separate things, but you can kind of class them as one. Training, visualization, affirmations, Superman, music, and finally gratitude. So I basically have them all in a table and I scored them out of 100. Now you might be thinking why? Well, if you give these things 100% every day, then you will get the most out of your day. So you don't need the exact same goals as me, we're all different, and if you want to do something like this, then I'd say go for it. I think you'll be able to find thousands and thousands of templates online. I literally have lines on mine with 7 columns for each day of the week, and at the end I will give it a score of 10. So if you think you did something, 80% well, then that would only be 0.8, which isn't 1, and therefore would be deducted from your daily score. And this is just something that keeps you going. A lot of us do have goals, but might not have a good way of recording them or keeping on top of them, and a daily goal sheet like this definitely does that. And because this is a daily goal sheet, it kind of helps us to remain focused on our goals, because we're having to fill them out on a daily basis. So it's not some people might have a weekly evaluation of their goals, whereas doing it daily kind of keeps that focus on them. And if you might have, Monday you might have 8 out of 10 for that day, which kind of gives you the motivation to get a 9 out of 10 for Tuesday, or maybe 10 out of 10 on the Wednesday. So I think this daily goal sheet is something that has really helped me, just because they've got 10 different things as well. It kind of keeps you how am I going to say this, kind of motivated and kind of stimulated to keep trying to get your goals, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think I've completely butchered what I was going to say, but I think it's kind of trying to kind of keep us energized towards our goals is probably the best way I can kind of explain it. And I think as well, the grading system, giving it 100% as well. The reason behind that is because obviously if you give, say if you're getting 80% sleep, then you're only going to get 80% recovery. Whereas if you get 100% sleep, you're going to get 100% recovery. And it's kind of the same, take one of mine for example, training. If I only give 70% in training, then I'm only going to get 70% out, whereas if I give 100%, then I'm going to get the most out of that training session. By kind of giving a score of 100, i.e. 100%, it's kind of getting us, stimulating our brains to try and kind of think about the effort that we're actually putting in to achieve our goals, which is something I kind of like because it helps me keep on top of it. And like I said earlier, if you're only given 80% one day, then it kind of gives you the motivation to improve that the next again day, if that makes sense. I also forgot to mention this earlier as well. One thing I do log as well is if I have any competitions. So say for example I've got 5 events that I'm racing in, then I'll put like the event down in my logbook, and I will kind of go into a lot of detail about how I felt in the race, what went well, what didn't go well, what I have to do in the future in training to improve that, and again kind of the effort that I felt that I put into the race. And I think this is one of the good things about logbooking, is because it kind of makes us very analytical about the things that we're doing every day to try and get the most out of them, if that makes sense. I always try and put as much detail as I can when I'm logging my training, because the more detail you have, the more information you have to kind of address things that you need to address. So you might have like a really horrible training session, and that can be down to like a number of factors. You might have not had enough sleep, which in your logbook you can have as a record. You'll know that day that you've not had enough sleep. It could be down to just the way you feel. You might not be motivated enough. So having all these permanent records in your logbook can help you each day improve each day, as opposed to a weekly sort of thing, where it might actually be too late, if that makes sense. And I even keep my logbook going through, like if I'm on holiday. Like if I'm on holiday for 2 weeks in Tenerife, trying to relax, then I will, keep a logbook, just because it kind of keeps me ticking over. Like obviously I'm not going to be like so harsh, like if I have like a pizza for dinner or whatever, then I'm not going to be like too harsh on myself. But the fact that I'm kind of like keep logbooking kind of keeps me in a routine, if that makes sense. And also, again, it kind of helps you see what works for you, and kind of makes you appreciate the things that makes you feel good, makes things that don't make you feel good. So I think logbooking is probably one of my favourite tools to use, because it's so, firstly, it's personal to you, and I think that's one of the reasons why personally it works for me, because it's kind of good to kind of get everything out onto like a piece of paper, instead of having to like keep it going and flowing through your head, and it kind of creates this horrible like thought process. And secondly, it just helps us be more appreciative of the things that on a day-to-day basis, and helps us keep accountable. So I think that's all I have to say about logbooking. I think I did expect it to be a bit longer, but obviously I kind of speak a bit fast, I think. But yeah, that was like my interpretation of logbooking and how it's kind of helped me as well, and I hope that you've kind of got something from this as well. And like I say, I think the key thing to logbooking is probably the fact that it keeps us accountable. By noting everything down, then we can kind of see what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, what we need to improve, what we need to keep doing to keep improving. And ultimately it just makes us feel a lot better by getting our thoughts out there onto paper, and kind of like offloads our memory as well. Like I'm reading a good book just now called The Organized Mind by Daniel Levitin, and one of them, the first couple of chapters is really emphasizing that sometimes to improve your memory you kind of have to offload your memory by writing things down. And one of the examples that they look at is actually using post-it notes. So if you have like lots of to-do lists, writing them down on post-it notes kind of offloads your thought process, which kind of saves up memory, which I think is actually quite interesting. And to be it has been quite a tough read because the chapters are pretty long, but it has been very interesting and very eye-opening about the mind and how we like organise and store information. But yeah, so back to logbooking. I think as well, I think a lot of people think that keeping a logbook is kind of to do with elite sport, but I wouldn't say it is necessarily. It's just the same as keeping a diary of things, or keeping a journal. And even when I retire in the future from swimming, I think I'm still going to keep my logbook, because I've just found it so useful, and I've probably felt more accountable because of it. There have been a few times where I haven't done a logbook just because I've not had actually any books to write in. So, and when that actually happens, I notice straight away that my kind of training goes downhill, my mood it is not great, and I think that's why I don't feel great, because I'm not holding myself to account. So I think that's going to be the concluding comments today. I hope you kind of enjoyed it and got something from it, and hope that you might try logbooking in the future to help you improve your mindset, help you become more accountable for you and whatever goals that you're wanting to achieve. Also, one thing that I do need to tell you is that I will be taking at least 1 week off of doing podcasts, just because I do have a lot of uni assignments coming up and a lot of meetings, and yeah, it's coming to the business end of the semester, so everything's going to be very hectic. So I'm kind of putting that as my priority for the minute, but as soon as all that's over, then I'll have more time to do podcasts, so they'll probably be more frequent, and I will actually be posting on the social media account, because that it's actually so difficult to keep up with that, because I have online learning and I just don't want to be looking at a screen. So yeah, that is this week's announcement. So with that, I'll say stay safe, stay positive, stay grateful, and I shall see you on the next one.